that you know, he doesn't come around much. That part of me isn't here anymore.
I sadly have no way of proving that it's true, but I sincerely had this insane experience, and it was the scariest thing that's ever happened in my life. This was very scary and upsetting. A couple of days ago, I randomly was sitting on my bed, watching YouTube, and I had a sudden hallucinogenic episode, for lack of a better word. I could hear my father's voice slowly fade into my head, and was able to talk back to it. And we were speaking back and forth about how freaked out we were about what was happening. Was this real? Etc. And then from another part of my brain, I started blurting out some of the most disturbing shit I've ever actually let cross my mind, and trying to make it stop with the first side of my brain. I kept thinking I had lost my mind, or this was a curse, or whatever straw my mind could grasp for. It was scaring and disgusting my father. After a few minutes, it shifted off to a friend's voice, did the same thing, and then another close friend. And only when I was rocking back and forth, weeping out loud and screaming in my head, did I hear it change into like a kind of laugh, but weirder.
Had enough? You look scared.
Or something like that. And I'm like, what's going on? And then it told me.
None of it was real.
And then I go, why are you doing this to me? And it says,
it's what I do. I'm a demon.
I didn't hear it for some reason. It was staticky. And I had to ask him again twice more. Then it sounded right up in my ear. And he says,
I'm a Veritas demon.
Never heard of it, and no one on r/demons has heard of it. It's not on Google either. The voice kept talking but faded away. And then when I chilled down and smoked a cigarette, I was able to Google Veritas because I had no idea what that word meant. And the definition scared the absolute shit out of me. I am not making this up in any way, and I think hopefully it's pretty understandable that it's embarrassing to explain because I sound crazy, but I've never experienced things like that before, or after, or since, so it's hard for me to think I have schizophrenia or something like that. I talked myself out of going to urgent care because I didn't want to be admitted into a psych ward. So yeah, that's all of it. I have no idea what a Veritas demon is, but I guess the word means truth. Edit. I know there's no such thing as a Veritas demon, and that's my reason for posting it here. I want to know if anyone has heard of this or can explain if this has happened before. Someone said in the comments of my last post, not every demon is accessible on Google, so I was hoping to find someone who has heard of such a thing. We were a joint family. My parents, younger sister, paternal uncle and aunt, 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. My cousins were older than my sister and me. We had an age gap of over 8 to 10 years. My father and uncle were pretty close, so we stayed together in a building where the ground floor belonged to us, and the first floor belonged to my uncle. My mum and my aunt were just cordial. However, my aunt loved us, and my mum was very affectionate to her children too. One day my cousin, let's call her Sue, came home from college and started acting very strange. Sue did not do the usual stuff, like washing her face or eating something. Instead, she went straight into the bedroom and slept the entire day. Since my aunt and uncle were full-time working parents, my cousins would mostly stay at our place until my aunt came back from work. My mum was pregnant with my 3rd sister during that time, and she was probably in her 3rd trimester. My aunt came back and called Sue upstairs, but she refused to go for some bizarre reason. My mum, being her usual self, just put it off to some strain, and Sue stayed with us the entire night. Things started right away. I was about 14 or 15 years old, so I remember everything distinctly. My younger sister was about 4 then. I woke up to go to the washroom, and as a child, I was always afraid of the dark. I woke my dad up and he stood outside the bathroom. Now Sue, Mum, and my younger sister were in one bedroom, and my dad and I were sleeping in another one, so we didn't know what was happening in the other bedroom. My dad just felt something was not right and checked on them, and to his fright, both Sue and my younger sister were missing. He woke up my mum, but my mum's state was almost like she was drugged to sleep. She could barely open her eyes. My dad started waking everyone up, and everyone started looking for them with my uncle, aunt, and cousins. My uncle found Sue and my younger sister crying profusely at the terrace. Sue was standing on the edge of the fence wall, and my younger sister was standing, looking at her, crying irrefutably. They were brought down, and my aunt, uncle, and dad immediately understood that something was not right. While all this was happening, my mum woke up and suddenly started screaming from downstairs that Sue was trying to kill the baby. But Sue was with us. My aunt looked visibly disturbed. She was staring at different points as if she was looking at someone. All the kids were sent downstairs the following day while Sue was up with my dad, uncle, and aunt. Since my mum was pregnant, she wasn't allowed to be. My cousins were all grown-ups, but they knew something was wrong, as my younger sister had been crying non-stop since that night, and nothing could calm her down. They were all trying to get her to sleep, but in vain. She too looked at different points and continued crying. Around noontime, a priest came, and Sue tricked all of them and came downstairs, which scared us. She looked at my mum and gave an evil scowl, and she carried my sister away. She was jumping in weird postures. Everyone stopped her, and then we could see she was possessed. She hurled abuses in Hebrew. The priest told us it was Hebrew, Arabic, and Urdu. She spoke in about 12 different voices, which everyone heard. They were voices of women, men, and it still sends chills down my spine even to think of it. They sent us all upstairs again, and meanwhile my mother started sensing the anxiety of something, and unfortunately, her water broke. She was taken to hospital by my cousins while my uncle, aunt, and dad stayed at home with Sue. To this day, I don't know what happened because my dad never spoke of it. But we came back from the hospital the next day, and Sue was gone. She wasn't there. Nobody said of her, and the priest did some recitations on all of us. We shifted from that house because of all the negative energy. About 2 years later, Sue was brought back home. She looked like she just had bones left, nothing else. She didn't remember anything. My uncle and aunt tried to normalize her life, but in vain. In 2 or 3 weeks, her health deteriorated, and she passed away. Except for my uncle, aunt, and dad, nobody knows what happened or where she was taken. My uncle and dad both passed away, so the only person who knows now is my aunt, who never speaks of it. It is an unspoken rule not to talk or mention those 2 nightmare days in the house. That night, the priest there died in an accident precisely 3 days after Sue was taken away from home. That house was sold right after Sue passed away. To this day, I never experienced something even remotely as chilling as this. From the day my younger sister was born, my cousins, me and my sisters, never go a day without doing the recitations we were told to do by the priest. It's like a routine now for us. So, some backstory. I've never really believed in demons or entities. Always been atheist and a materialist. No history of mental illness and completely sober. So a few years ago I started getting into religion out of curiosity and wanting to explore whether there's more out there. I was reading deep into Christian mysticism and Kabbalah and various other religious writings, also some occultism type stuff. Meditating on it and trying to believe in it as to try and experience what religious folk call God. Thinking if I align myself with the belief system and get into the right headspace, I might be able to get a sign and experience God. Was also going to church out of curiosity. as I got deeper into it all and started to believe in some of the fundamental premises, like there being a God, the existence of bad entities and good entities, etc., and feeling like I'm getting closer to God, I started having really bizarre dreams. In the dreams, it was like my whole body would start feeling warm and vibrating, almost like an orgasm. It felt really good, and it would get more and more intense to the point it felt like I was going to leave my body. But at the same time, it felt like something was trying to get me to leave my body, so it could use my body for something. It would always scare me to the point I'd try to fight it and stay in my body, and then I'd wake up. One time this happened, but in the dream it was everyone being filled with this feeling, and something trying to pull everyone out of their body so something else could take over. It got so overwhelmingly intense, like something was literally pulling me out of my body. I fought it till I woke up, and woke up with blood pouring out of my nose. Fast forward to like a week after that last intense dream. I was driving on a country road and I suddenly felt something heavy come over my mind, like something had attached itself to my consciousness. It felt warm and good, like in the dreams I had. It was getting more and more intense to the point I felt bliss, and it felt like I was being tugged on and could leave my body. That's when it started to get overwhelming and like I was losing consciousness. I also had my girlfriend in the car. It went from feeling benevolent, like God trying to get me to rapture or some shit, to malevolent, like something was trying to make me lose consciousness and crash. I started to fight it and stay in my body and stay conscious. And then my radio started saying, "Let go, let go. It's your last chance to go home." And it was repeating itself, but it wasn't in a scary voice. It's hard to explain, but it sounds like an actual singer that was on the radio. I ended up having to force myself to pull over. I was basically panicking at this point. And then it all stopped. And I saw a fox standing like 10 meters away, just sitting there watching me. I started driving again slowly, and it was literally walking parallel to my car, watching me. I asked my girlfriend if the radio went weird, and she said it was normal the whole time. After this, I stopped involving myself in any religious things and spiritualism. I was scared as fuck. And then, it never happened again. Those dreams disappeared and I never had another frightening experience. Since then though, whenever I've told people about this experience, I get a weird shivering up my spine and feel fear. A few weeks ago, I was messaging someone and telling them my story, and my 2-year-old suddenly woke up beside me, hysterical, and I was asking him what's wrong, and he was pointing at something in my room. He seemed completely terrified. It took him ages to calm down. I was debating whether to post this or not, but maybe someone else has had a similar experience. I still remain completely skeptical because I know how powerful the human mind is, but I can't really explain the experience I had. The auditory hallucinations, the overwhelming feeling that came over me, the coincidence of the fox, and all stopped as soon as I stepped away from the religious and spiritual stuff. Kind of a long and choppy story, but bear with me. I went to middle school or junior high school in a smaller town. There honestly was absolutely nothing to do besides go to the mini mall or to the community rec center where they would hold these teen dances and play horrible early 2000s music. Ended up going to one of these teen dances per usual with a group of friends, and per usual, said group of friends got into it with the preps or jock kids. Fight breaks out, police are called, everyone scatters. Me and this kid, who I'll just call Nate, end up walking back to his house on this bike path that runs along the back side of this rec center. It's nighttime, and there is a skate park to one side of us for a while, and then nature trails and a river on the other side. We keep walking along this path, and suddenly Nate stops and says, "Do you see that?" pointing into the pitch blackness as he faced the direction of the nature trails and river. Now, this kid was admittedly at times not always too nice to me, and I thought he was just messing with me at first. I say, "See what? There's nothing there." But at this point, this fool is walking towards whatever he thinks he sees. I see him walk right up, like he's approaching a person, looks back at me, and he just crumbles. It was like he fainted or something. So now I'm in the middle of this path, completely alone, and there may or may not be some type of presence that just caused my friend to pass out. I'm scared to death at this point, obviously, and this is all becoming too much for my 13-year-old brain to handle. I'm half Hispanic and grew up around very religious elders, and was always told when I had nightmares or if I ever felt evil that I needed to pray. I started walking towards my friend because I didn't want to leave him there, but I also didn't want to be alone, and I began praying. Now, as an adult, I am not religious, but at this time I was doing whatever I thought would help. I went to try and pick my friend up, and he was so heavy, abnormally so. I was big for my age, and he was much smaller than me height and weight-wise, and it was like I was trying to pull a grown man. I know dead weight, but this felt different. He was also ice cold to the touch despite it being the middle of summer. I started to drag him and was praying and focusing on this one particular star as I did so. Not really sure why looking back, but I focused on this star and prayed repeatedly, and my initial thought was to drag him to the hospital. But I swear the more I prayed, the brighter this star got, and it was like he was revived or something. He woke up annoyed that I was dragging him and scuffing his Iversons, and confused about what had happened. He said that he saw an old man near the tree line when we were walking, and that the old man motioned for Nate to come towards him. He said once he got close to the old man, this thing put his freaking hand inside of Nate, which is apparently what made him pass out. I was happy he was okay and that I wasn't alone. We ended up walking back to his house like nothing happened. But I believe something did happen to Nate that night. Flash forward a month or so later, and per usual, I'm meeting with my friends to once again go to one of these teen dances because, per usual, that's the only thing going on. I get to Nate's house, and the whole feeling is just off. Hard to describe, really. I go downstairs to Nate's room, and he's not in there. But this sometimes happened, and we were good enough friends that I would just wait for him to pop in, which he would do normally. But this time, there was nothing. I go back upstairs, and every single animal this dude had, which was like a cat and 2 or 3 small dogs if I remember right, were all standing, hair raised with their backs to his front door, staring up. And I see my friend Nate sitting over this banister he had in his house in a weird way, feet dangling. Didn't see him up there when I came in, and he's just silent, scribbling and mumbling something. "What's up, man?" I ask him nervously, not knowing what the hell was going on at this point. Nate looked up at me and looked like he hadn't slept in a few days. Deep circles under his eyes, and he says, "I ain't fucking scared." Confused, I ask, "Scared of who, bro?" And he jumps down from the banister with a paper in his hand, and he gives it to me. The paper has the word death, and then just some black scribbles like he had been sitting scribbling the same circle in the same place for a long time. I instantly got all the bad vibes and nope energy, and flat out told him, "I'm going home, man." And I opened the door, leaving his terrified animals in a corner, and wondering if they'd be okay. Long story longer, Nate eventually got into a lot of trouble, dealt with some pretty crippling vices, and though he's still alive now, looks like a shell of his former self. Or just not what you would have expected this kid to grow up and be, to say the least. I think I witnessed a possession happen to him. I haven't told many people this story, and I don't think I've ever shared it in this detail. My name is Adrian. I'm 29 years old from Hungary, and I only talked to a handful of people about this ever. English is not my native language, so sorry for any mistakes. It started when I was 15 years old. Me and my girlfriend at the time were drinking in the back of my primary school. We were on the brink of breaking up. We got drunk, talked a lot, and we did break up that night. It was late, so I decided to take her to her place. It wasn't that far. I took her home, kissed one last time, and then she closed the door, leaving me devastated on the spot. She happened to live near our town graveyard, so I got this stupid idea in my drunken, depressed head to go into the graveyard and sit on a tomb. I did just that. I was sitting there for about 45 minutes, in the dark, in the middle of the graveyard, at around 1 a.m. During this time, a fox came to me, and I pet him, unaware that it could be rabbit or something. I wasn't thinking about this at the time. I only realized this later when I was like, holy shit, I'm an idiot. It could have bit me because one of the symptoms of rabies is the affected animals are friendlier. But I just pet him a little and he left me. When I decided it was enough sitting there, I went home and got home no problem. Nothing strange happened that night. Some days later, me and the boys were hanging out in front of my old primary school. We decided to take a group photo, and there was like 10 of us. One of my friends took the picture, and that was when the first strange thing happened. Everyone looked normal, except me. My eyes were shining in the picture. We found it strange, but we thought it was maybe just the lighting, because it was nighttime and the only light source was the school's lamps at the entrance, which were always on at night. I switched places with one of my other friends, but my eyes kept glowing in every picture, wherever I stood. We thought it was strange, and freaked out a bit, but there was nothing we could do about it. I didn't think much of it at that time either. It was around that time when I started to feel uneasy in general. I had mood swings and felt like something was watching me all of the time. For example, when I was playing on my PC in my room, my closet was behind me, and there was a half-meter wide gap between my closet and the corner of the room. That spot was pitch black, and I felt someone was there. I had this strong feeling to turn around and check the spot many times, but sometimes I didn't have the courage because I was sure that if I turned around, I might see something that would scare the shit out of me. I was terrified for seemingly no reason. Haven't had bad feelings about this ever before. This feeling became the norm for me, this constant dread when I was alone. I started to see things in the corner of my eyes too. I was walking home from school when I saw a severed head on top of a car for a split second out of nowhere in broad daylight. Of course there was nothing there when I looked. I saw figures randomly, human-like figures, but only half of them. I saw only the lower half of them, under the torso part, but somehow felt their gender. I could feel it, but these were only for seconds. I heard voices out of nowhere for split seconds too. The shrieking scream of a man most of the time. I was having a rough time. I didn't talk to anyone about it, not even my parents. I lived with my father at that time, and it wasn't the best between us at all. My mother was abroad at that time, and we didn't talk much either. I was searching about these symptoms I had the past couple of weeks, and found this page about possession. I believed in the paranormal anyway, but when I read about that stuff, that possession can occur when you're in a weak mental state, depressed, drunk, or just near a site where someone lost their lives, like an accident or cemetery. Well, I got almost everything checked. Being in a cemetery drunk and freshly broke up and depressed was like an open door for any spirit according to the site. The site even mentioned the glowing eye. It meant that there's more than one spirit in the body when that happens, or something like that. Creepy. I started documenting these things happening, or at least tried to. And I had successes. I'm pretty sure I saved everything on a CD if I remember right. Videos, pictures, and even attempted an EVP recording. But that CD and my old PC, which may contain these things, is somewhere in my father's house, still with some of my old stuff too. But I haven't been there for 9 years now. There were photos I made of my face, for example, and on the photo, there was my face, but there was another half face. It looked like it was coming out of mine. It was foggy, but you could spot the major shapes of a face. That was the only pic I showed my father out of everything. He called bullshit, so I didn't bother anymore after that. I made a video recording in my room when there was this huge storm outside. I pretty much just hovered the camera over my lit room slowly. It was about a 20-second video. After that, I uploaded to my PC and opened it with a video editor and checked frame by frame. When I get to my door in the video, it happens in like 5 frames. I had a glass door. The lower half was wood, and the upper is this rigid glass, so I could only see silhouettes in front of it when it was closed. By its height, a childlike figure leaned on my glass door from the outside, just out of nowhere, and put her left arm on the glass. She had these black eyes and her mouth was a black hole too. It was open like she was screaming. Then she disappeared the way she appeared. It happened so quickly, I could barely see it in normal speed after I had slowed down the video and knew what to look out for. But I cut the video and slowed it down at the door. I wanted to show my closest friends. I did show it to them, along with the EVP, and they freaked out and got scared of me. I kept hanging out with them, but they were kind of cautious towards me. They didn't know how to deal with these things. We didn't really talk about it because I just enjoyed their company. And the more I was with friends, the less time I had to spend in dread. I didn't want to alienate them from me. About that EVP, it was just a quick impulse one night to make it. I started the voice recording on my phone and kept talking for like 10 minutes about these things that are happening to me and the feelings I had. When I listened to the recording the next day, I was blown away. It could sound cliche, but during that recording, I asked, please give me a sign, and could hear a male voice talking over my voice when I said sign.
I gave it.
His voice was like he was shouting it, but from afar. The voice was so scary, and I can still remember it clearly. If I ever go and visit my father, I will dig through my old stuff and try to find this evidence, because it's so annoying now that I can't show you. There was more stuff that happened throughout the 4-month period, but I want to tell you how all of this ended. It ended with a dream. I was in the middle of a small town and I only remember that I was laying on the ground face upwards and couldn't move. Above me were 3 old lady figures. All 3 of them had these mosaic faces. A pure red, a blue, and a yellow-colored face. And they were talking about something I don't remember. Only the last sentence. Leave him. He suffered enough already. I woke up and all the bad feelings, every strange happening, just disappeared, and haven't had anything like it happen to me ever since. I think I was possessed. Everything points towards that. I never sought any help from any professional or anyone else. I've never had any health problems before or after this. I'm physically and mentally healthy, have been my whole life. Never had to go to a hospital ever. Maybe I got lucky and the spirit got bored of me. But then I don't understand my dream. Who were the old ladies? And why did they convince the spirit to stop torturing me? I made a post over a year ago about how I was being haunted by the ghost of a girl that went missing in the early 90s. Out of respect to her family, I will not share her name here this time. Frankly, who she was doesn't really matter. It all started In the early days of the COVID lockdowns in 2020, I had a lot of time on my hands, and out of boredom came an experience of messing around with a Ouija board with a friend. We tried reaching out to this girl and got a response, though I was very much skeptical of it at the time. Things elevated quickly after that, and my memory regarding the events is somewhat skewed, as it was very traumatic and happened so fast. But this is the gist of it. She made herself known in many ways early on, but the reoccurring sign was her reaching out through my Alexa device, playing Love My Way by the Psychedelic Furs. When I checked the voice command records to see what initiated these songs, there was nothing there. I believed then, as I do now, that there is something about the song that she was using to tell me something of her whereabouts. I have my theory, but I'm not going to share it here. In the beginning, the song would play maybe once or twice a day, but after a couple of weeks, it would play constantly throughout the day and night. I then started hearing a disembodied crying that hovered above me. It was an agonizing sound that would last anywhere from a few minutes to the better part of an hour. The crying evolved to voices, and she began urging me to go to the house that she disappeared from. By the time she started speaking to me, I had become obsessed with both her and her case, and was certain that she was using me as a vessel to solve her disappearance and find her remains. Her demand of me to travel to her house became so overwhelming that in the dead of winter, I abruptly drove 10 hours through the night in awful weather conditions to get there. The experience I had when arriving at the house was surreal. I became physically and violently ill. It felt like a combination of the worst flu you could imagine, drug withdrawal, dehydration, and a stroke, all mixed into one. I could feel her presence leave my car, and then suddenly the illness subsided. I felt calm for a moment, but was then overcome by a sinister feeling, a sense of dread and foreboding. I realized at this time that she did not want me to solve her disappearance. She just wanted me to bring her home. But in her place, something else attached itself to me. The drive home was extremely depressing, and I felt as though a dear friend had died, though I knew I wasn't alone. And there was still something with me. It just wasn't her anymore. In the first few weeks after I returned home, I was desperate to get her back. I don't know if it was because I missed her, or I was afraid of this new thing that had attached itself to me, and I wanted her back to rid me of it. I began calling it the Root, because it attached itself to the northernmost corner of my bedroom. It was like a giant ball of negative, hateful energy that just stayed right there and pulsated, a sense of existential dread. Despite its extreme negativity, I felt like I was a slave to it. This was my life until about 2 weeks ago. I had decided that if I didn't force myself to get out and find help, this thing would consume me. I went to a New Age spiritual shop in my town where they hold psychic readings and workshops, and spoke to a medium there who said she specialized in cleansings. I had her come to my house so she could see what she would be working with, and upon entering, she became ill and had to use the bathroom. She said this called for more than what she could handle, and came back with a few different people. They spent the day doing a cleansing ritual, and that evening, for the first time in over a year, my home was free from that evil thing. It feels so nice to be free from all of that, and if I can offer one word of advice, it would be to never touch a Ouija board unless you know exactly what you're doing. I still hope the girl has found peace wherever she is. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.